Lewis in the Black Horse Pub.
Well, good morning, Harry Atterton.
Good morning, Keith. Good morning. Just watching those wonderful pictures of Lewis. It always inspires me seeing the castle on the hill of Lewis. Amazing.
Right. Well, it's just behind the pub, actually.
Oh, really?
Not very far behind the pub.
Yes.
Just slightly down the hill. That's all. Yes. But within easy walking distance. So we put it that way.
Easy to walk down than up, I suppose. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yes.
I seem to recall that it was built by de Varenne, which is spelled Warren, W-A.
De Varenne, yes.
Varenne, yes. Who was one of the I think he was number 2 to William the Conqueror. I'm not sure, but he was a very important person.
Yes, he was. He fought next to William the Conqueror, and some reports say either he or his wife was related to him, and they came on a trip to France and saw the Cluniac Priory, and she, being rather a pious woman, said, "I want one of those." So they came back and planned to build the priory, and William said, "No, I'm not having any of that nonsense." And so she went to tea with him one afternoon and heckled him until in the end he gave in and sort of said, "Yes, okay, away you go." So the priory was they started to build it in 1068. Only 4 or 5 years after the conquest.
Yeah.
Which is rather brave of them, actually, because people like Hereward the Wake were busy going around murdering every last Norman that they possibly could. So being out in the open like that is rather a brave thing to do.
No. Quite well. I mean, so de Varenne, the de Varenne family died out, I believe. The two interesting things there. One is they were Normans. They came from near where I live now. And second thing is, of course, it's the origin of the name Warren, W-A-R-R-E-N, which is a popular English name, but in fact its origins are in the French language.
Yes, it has an E on the end.
Yeah.
On the coat of arms, I believe it is Varenne, and I think that the W is pronounced as a V.
Indeed, it is.
The other way, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And that's right. And I think the lands eventually accrued to Arundel, to the Dukes of Norfolk, because there was no direct heritage. Yeah.
Have you ever been to Arundel Castle?
Oh, I have, and it's quite impressive. It's the most.
It is very impressive. Yeah. It is David Frost's homes.
Yeah, it's one of
David Frost, the popular talk show host.
Oh yes,
he married into that family.
The Howards, the Howard family, isn't it?
I believe it is.
Howards, and they own about 30 castles in Britain, all told, I believe. And we've got Castle Howard, of course, in Yorkshire, which was near where I was born. And they do have quite a list of beautiful homes.
Yeah.
which
Well, of
can be
course,
made. Sounds
when
wonderful.
William dished out the land, he didn't dish it out in sort of plots of houses. He old tracts of countryside with towns and villages and cathedrals and God knows what all else. They all reverted to a very very select group of people. So
Well,
they did inherit rather a lot. Yeah.
well, they do, and then now it all belongs to tech enterprises and people. We have, we've always had an elite, and either a financial or a societal elite in the world. And in those days, it was by family, by heritage. It's now if you can invent the latest model electric car and so,
Yes.
or artificial intelligence. So there always will be an elite class, and that's fairly healthy, I think, because if we were all the same, there would be nobody aspiring to improve themselves,
No,
either
and
financially.
it shows a shift of power as well.
Mhm.
I mean, there's no question that, for instance, in the turn of the 18th or 19th century and up until the advent of the 20th, is the industrialists, the new factory owners, and so on, were the most powerful people in Britain.
Of course, and of course the whole question of power is how you use it. If you use it for good or bad,
Yeah.
and the to be born into power and assume the responsibilities that go with it is a very important continuity in society. Of course, there were always black sheep in every family going back in time who abused that position. But generally speaking, when you're born with wealth, I suppose you inherit the responsibility that goes with it.
Well,
And
you should. You
instant
should.
fortune. Hang on, these instant fortunes that are made, the people are just not used to having that kind of wealth, and it can be abused. And you see
That's right. Yes.
the extremes to which they go, and whether it's somebody like Putin building a palace 6 times the size of Buckingham Palace, and when money comes to people quickly, they don't know how to handle it. I think.
No. I
Well,
suppose actually the reflection of that is footballers and pop stars and so on.
indeed, it
Um,
is.
yeah, I mean they kill themselves off by the dozens. They're taking drugs.
Yeah.
They get all this money and they have no idea. It doesn't satisfy them,
Hmm.
and
But
so
this
they
is
start to pop pills.
absolutely just, and the question of somebody winning these obscene amounts of money on the lotto tickets.
Yes, yes.
What do you do when suddenly you've been living in poverty and you've suddenly got £100 million? Uh, it
Well,
must
Harry, if it happens
be.
to me, I'll let you know.
Oh, well, I will help relieve you of the burden. We can share it. Yeah. Mm, mm, mm,
Actually, by the time that I win, we'll probably have a little backpack so that I can flip over to see you. I'll be over in 5 minutes, Harry, and have one of these little jet packs on my back.
mm. Of course, absolutely, yeah. Mhm. So what's the
Now,
big news in Britain at the moment? What's
well,
happening?
I wanted to ask you, um, what is your view? Because your views are very astute. Um, I mean, I do tell people that you give us a fresh view from overseas on what Britain is all about. What's your take on the fact that George Galloway has managed to win an election?
Well, I think the Galloway has won the election on the back of the Muslim vote, from what I can see, and Britain has got to face up to the fact that the Muslim vote is a very important factor, a political factor now in Britain.
Yes.
Um, the We're now running in Britain at about 80%, 80% to 20% in Britain. And probably by in 50 years will be a minority. Now, is that a racist statement? The answer is yes, if it's designed to keep newcomers out of the mainstream. But if they integrate, then no, it isn't. Because Britain has always been a melting pot. So it depends on the ability of one side to welcome the minorities and the ability of the minorities to be welcomed or to remain in their own religious or cultural bubble and seek to impose their rules, anything right up to Sharia law, on the majority.
Yes.
And at the moment, the argument for multiculturalism is proving to be the most dangerous thing that ever came down the pike, because we don't want multiculturalism. We want one culture, a culture that is influenced by the new people coming in. Perhaps it changes, as it always has, as I mentioned a moment ago. But if we become distinct cultural and religious entities, then which multiculturalism implies, we're never going to get anywhere. It's going to lead to civil war, and Enoch Powell is going to be proved right finally.
Chaos.
And so, if we see that translated into politics, whereas somebody like Galloway can be elected on the strength of that vote, it's quite scary. However, the election of Galloway, I think, seen in isolation, is a protest vote. The main parties were rejected. Even the person who came second was unknown politician. So the voters generally, be they from minorities or from the mainstream, were saying we don't want any of the main party people in here, which they've not proved themselves incapable of governing the nation. And it was a form of protest. And what could be a bigger protest than to send a character like Galloway to Parliament? But I don't think that will happen in the broader field. I think it will happen only on occasion when
in protest,
as a protest vote.
Yeah.
So I don't know. He's apparently quite a skilled speaker. He will say things in Parliament that the other parties daren't say. Probably a lot of rubbish, but at least he'll be speaking, I suppose, from what he's got in as a heart. And I don't know. It could be a sideshow. It could be an interesting demonstration of democracy. Yeah. Anyway, we'll see. He's
interesting is the word, I think. Yes. I've never met Galloway, but I, as you know, I actually. I shouldn't say found him, because that would be untrue. But I was the first consultant, if you like, into Russia Today television, and actually set it up from just an empty room. In fact, my favorite story is that I took a look at this room and said, "Where's the television station?" And they said, "This is it." And I said, "Well, the least you might do is give me a waste paper bin." Nothing more was said, and I was offered a piece of paper to sign later in the day. And the next day I walked into the room. It was still absolutely empty except for one waste paper bin.
Amazing experience for you then, in that case. But I don't think
but George Galloway was a favourite of the powers that be, who had come along long after I'd finished with it, of course. Powers that be in London, because they had a studio, very sophisticated studio actually, on Millbank, just by the House of Commons, and they used him very frequently as being one of their heroes.
Well, these people add a bit of colour to politics, but I don't think it's particularly significant. I don't think he'll be able to change the direction in which Britain is going. Nor should he, in a way, because I'm sure that what he wants to inflict upon the country isn't quite the
Yes.
medicine the country needs. The country needs some honest government, and it's certainly not going to get it from either the Tories or the Socialists. They're quite incapable, I think, of seeing beyond their own immediate needs. And
Yes. The only thing is, Harry, I think that also the splinter parties, if you like, have also proved that it's beyond them as well. Particularly in the latter days of Theresa May's administration, is the tail was wagging the dog. The backbenchers were completely out of control. They couldn't be disciplined at all, and they made a right pig's ass of it. So I think that in many ways we really need Boris Johnson, for all his faults, a very colourful character, but not a stupid man by any means. And just before the last election, he made a speech and said that our system of governance is not fit for purpose and needs reform. Well, he got into power and almost immediately was hit with various crises, COVID and so on, and never got around to addressing the issue. But he recognised that our present system is not suitable for modern day governance, and nobody else has recognised that.
Well, I'm not sure that you're right there. I think Rishi Sunak has just recognised it, but he won't do anything about it. He's called out the faults. He called out the fact that the police are quite useless now, and that half the burglaries, 100% of the burglaries in certain parts of the country are not even solved. I mean, the sheer incompetence of the police, you can't have confidence in them anymore. He called this out. He did a lot of things. He was quite frank in his assessment. But what's he going to do about it? Nothing.
Nothing. Yes.
And the same with the people coming in. I mean,
yes. Boris's research said that we are not suited for modern day governance, right from the House of Lords down to the parish councils. Now that's a big remit. That's a very, very wide brushstroke. But nonetheless,
what did he do? What did he do about it, though?
Well, the unfortunate thing is, being something of a bit of a supporter of Boris's, is he didn't get chance to do anything. He was elected prime minister and immediately was hit with a illness, a disease. So he did nothing. And I mean, you're right in your assessment there. But I don't think that Sunak has looked at the thing in toto. I think that what he's done is he's picked up on 3 or 4 things which are wrong, and looked brave for saying it. When what he should be saying is, look, we're worse than useless. We really got to get stuck in and see what it is that modern day Britain needs.
Well, absolutely. He's made the diagnosis, he's analysed what's wrong, and now we need some solutions. And even in identifying those problems, he should have been offering, a program to remedy them, and he didn't. I mean, so it's all window dressing. And the other point that you made earlier, which is a very valid point, is that the parties, there's no discipline in the parties anymore. It's who shouts the loudest, who gets the most attention. The Conservative Party, or the Parliamentary Conservative Party, not Conservative Party itself, in the sense of grassroots Conservatives, but the Parliamentary Conservative Party, they're all fighting amongst themselves. There's some that are extremely left wing, some in the middle, some to the right, and the same thing in the Labour Party. The Corbyn influence is far from dead. So somebody like Starmer is having to kowtow to all of these just different groups. I mean, somebody like Margaret Thatcher didn't do that. She just put her hand on things.
Right. He's your favorite man, Harry. Not to interrupt you.
Oh, very fabulous. There we go. There we go. Dream again of
in your favorite club.
Absolutely. I can't wait till I find myself at your bar. I really can't. If there's one thing that you miss when you live abroad, it's the English pub. And every impression I get of the Black Horse is that it truly meets that criterion. It looks so traditional, and in fact, Henry himself looks like he's right out of Central Casting as a pub owner. So you'll find me there one of these days. Don't you worry about that. Yeah. Yeah.
All right, I'll leave you gentlemen to get on with
it. Okay. Oh gosh, I put it on the ground this morning. I put the back door so I don't have to carry it down there, and I left it there.
Yeah, it was all the way down by the grammar school.
Was it really?
Yeah, I'll talk to you later.
Okay.
See you later.
Okay, bye again.
Yeah.
But coming back to the British political scene, it's fragmented. There's no sense of what the nation needs, and everybody's out for themselves or to promote their particular ideas. There seems to be no law and order in Britain anymore. I don't know whether I miss Britain terribly, but I'm not sure I could live there anymore.
You're absolutely right. I mean, we've got a police force which a very peculiar approach to law and order is endemic.
Mm-hmm.
If you notice, they protect themselves. For instance, Cressida Dick was head of the Met. It was heavily criticised for permitting knives to be carried by youngsters.
Mm-hmm.
And the big hoo-ha about how she shouldn't have let this, and it led to her demise, is 2 years later, there's a big hoo-ha about the police chief allowing knives to be carried by youngsters. I mean, they don't try to handle the thing at all. It is, as you just said, they identify the problem and then do nothing about it. And that is, in terms of law and order, it is very, very suspect. Let's put it that way. And the fact that a policeman can hide in the ranks, having performed the foulest of crimes, it makes you wonder just what the hell's going on. Who is ruling the roost?
Well, that's true too, and we've seen many examples of where the police themselves need to clean up their act. The frightful people who have been in the force for years, knowingly committing a number of crimes and yet getting away with it. So confidence in the police is gone. Now, this has got to be a top-down thing. You've got to have people who are running the show who are really hard-nosed about it. And whether it's in the police or whether it's in the public amongst the knife-carrying youth. So what do we do about it? We don't even prosecute people anymore for shoplifting less than £200, I believe. So that's an invitation to commit crime. And how do you punish them? You can't put them in jail because there's no space in the jails. so we have to find a form of punishment, but we're frightened of doing it because that takes away somebody's liberties. Well, how about the liberties of the little old lady who's beaten up
Exactly.
at the age of 80 to steal her shopping money? No, I mean, we deserve all we're getting. Bring back the lash.
I mean, it's almost as if people are embarrassed by being good.
Absolutely. Yeah.
No, what's the situation in France, Harry?
Well, in France, it's very lax too. They've gone the same way. It's human rights have become so critically important. The woke movement has it's that everybody can, whatever they do wrongly, they can blame on somebody else, blame on the system. They can never accept individual responsibility. So I think modern society, whether it's France or Germany or England, is going the same way. And of course, the pendulum will swing because it always does. And then we're going to move into, because we've gone too far one way, we'll swing too far the other way, become too authoritarian.
That's right.
We've got to find the middle, and the middle has very often been found historically in Britain as opposed to other nations. Our history is a series of slight ups and downs. The history of France, for instance, or Germany, huge ups and downs. They hit the top and then they hit the bottom, whereas we seem to float along and with the middle course. And it's been generally a stable society in Britain, with exceptions, of course. But I feel we're sinking down so far one way now that there's going to be, in the Darwinian sense, to each action an opposite reaction. It's going to bounce back into authoritarianism, and a lot of people are going to suffer. But that's what's needed to put the show back on the road, as it were. And it's certainly not the Conservatives, and absolutely not the Socialists and the Starmer, who just decides which way the wind is blowing every morning when he gets up, and that's the way he goes, and these new parties coming up, which reflect more the feelings of the people, like parties like Reform. They are listening to the people, and they're giving the people what they're asking for. Trump in the United States is listening to the people and giving them what they're asking for. Now, does that make them right? I mean, Trump's quite a dislikable character, but surely nothing can be worse than this the Walking Dead, who are in charge at the moment. So I mean, that's what happens when you sink too far one way. You'll give birth to new philosophies, new ways of governing, and maybe people who do, for once, listen to the people. I don't know. Is your feeling? May I ask you a question here? Is your feeling that the Reform Party is just a short-term aberration, or is it something that will last and will eventually become mainstream? They're up to about 13 or 14%, I believe, in the polling, which is a long way from ever forming a government. But
it depends on the strength of the basically conservative politicians. They've always had a grip on power within the Conservative Party that is a bit like the iceberg. What you see is not really what exists. But if in fact that grip is beginning to loosen, then I can see that parties like the Reform can flourish and gain some purchase. But I actually think that has been demonstrated with Trump. My reading, and most Americans go along with me, is that in the very first election, is that the two established parties, the Democrats and the Republicans, both had totally lost touch with the electorate. They didn't even know what the electorate wanted or what the electorate were. They were in a bubble, getting on with the business as they saw it, and the American public had got thoroughly sick and tired of it. And Trump came along, and nobody gave a damn whether he was a good, bad, or indifferent guy. He'd managed to breach the walls of the established democratic process, and people loved him for it because he signaled a new era, which he has actually. Not a very pleasant era, but nonetheless, he has signaled a new era. And I wonder what's going to happen in the United States, where it is rather more clear cut there, because minority parties don't stand much chance. Here, they actually do. You get minority party. I mean, well, the Liberal Party, for instance, has had influence for quite some time. So I honestly think that the Reform Party and other parties could easily find themselves roaring down the straight to the finishing post in quite a strong position.
Well, they'll end up, I think, as kingmakers, I don't think Starmer and his people will do as well as the polls forecast. They'll probably get in, but I don't know. They're going to face themselves an impossible task, because the kind of policies to put Britain back on track are not policies normally espoused by a left-wing party. A left-wing party is supposedly the party of the people, and wants to make people feel better and give them a little bit more, give them more benefits. Well, the benefits need to be cut in two. It's not the socialists that are going to do that, and the Conservatives didn't even have the guts or the wit to do that. When we've got millions of young men of working age between the age of 18 and whatever they call 34, who are living just on benefits. Well, I mean, come on, it's getting
and
crazy.
Don't want to work, yeah.
So it's not the Conservatives have proved that they haven't got the guts to do it, and the Labour Party are trapped within their philosophy. They do not embrace policies like that. It's not in their nature. The Labour Party is a left-wing party has been from the beginning to try and improve the lot of the common people. Well, they can improve the lot of the common people by taxing the rich and giving it to the poor. But eventually the money runs out.
That's right.
And that's when the Labour people get chased out again, and they bring in somebody else to clean it up after the mess.
Yes.
So we're in the swing right now. The Conservatives would be chased out, and rightly so. But the Labour Party, no way, God's green earth will be able.
There is a vacuum.
Will be able to put the thing back on track. You need some external force, and it may be that external force is hitting the bottom, an economic depression, a war. Would you believe that? That seems to be around the corner. And
the winds of war are certainly beginning to blow quite strongly, aren't they?
Aren't they? Yeah. Yeah. And this useless Chancellor, what's his name, Hunt, isn't going to spend a penny on defence when it's the most glaring need that the West has at the moment. Certainly, Britain, with an army less than it had in Napoleonic times. Can you imagine that?
Yes.
I mean, it's getting so silly, and increased taxes. This poor girl Liz Truss, who clumsily made the right moves in the wrong fashion. But in Argentina, you've got Milei doing exactly what Liz Truss proposed. And it's against some resistance, I might point out, but it will restore Argentina to the model economy that it was at the back in the early 1900s, it was the per capita the richest nation on earth.
Yes,
And then
later than that as well. I mean,
yes.
I can remember when. I mean, it is particularly since we played Argentina at rugby way back in the 1960s.
Sure.
And they were always considered to be a very, very wealthy nation with cattle ranches and all sorts of things with and a manufacturing base. It was a model economy.
Absolutely, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
No, and very similar economic structure to that of Canada. Wheat and cattle and minerals and forestry. Population very similar at the time as well. So the two, it could be compare the two nations quite well. But then you got into the second Peronist term, which sought simply to be popular and created a whole class of society who didn't work anymore, and which is what's happened in Britain. So very similar. It's a very interesting point that we should talk about that, because both of us know Argentina quite well. I worked there quite a bit, and I think Britain is following the same lines, and the solution will be okay. Let's take a blueprint on this. If Milei in Argentina manages to pull things around, grabbing some of his policies would be good. He's eliminating half of the government departments, the civil service. Now, Hunt has suggested that he's going to cut some of the excess flesh off the civil service in Britain, which has grown from 400 to 600,000 over the past very few years, and is obstructive to general government because they've all got embedded opinions of their own and they're not following the orders of their ministers. So maybe taking the knife to the civil service is a very good thing. That's what Milei is doing, and some of the policies he applies to put Argentina back on track will probably be good medicine for Britain. But again, who's going to do that? You can make that diagnosis, that analysis, but Starmer is never going to do it. Some young kids coming along like Reeves, and will do their best, bright kids, but no real background in this sort of work, and then the Conservatives have shown themselves to be quite incompetent, as I unfortunately have to keep saying. So I don't know who's going to give them the strong medicine that is required to put Britain on track. So maybe sheer need in the end, you've got to allow it to sink to the bottom before they start to swim for themselves. Yeah. I don't know. I could be wrong. And of course, remember, Keith, that you and I are silly old men. And because we've seen it all, we think we know it all. Well, we don't.
No, we don't. But we don't know less. I mean, the thing that I think that is the weakness, the flaw in our system is that the young think that the old don't know it. And the old think that the young don't know it. And never the twain shall meet. And I mean, is the other day, the question of Mirador came up. And I said, well, it is a remarkable organization, really. I mean, I don't mean this in any way as an aggrandizement of myself, but I say, we've got two of our presenters who are 2 years short of 90, and none over 50. And we all get along famously together, and we forged an entity that appeals. I mean, it's got a lot of popular appeal. It appeals to, well, let's put it this way. When I was in the bank the other day, a lady of some 30 plus years, said, "Are you the television man?" And I said, "Yes." And she said, "Oh, I love your programs. They are fab." She said, "Fab." Now, our programs being described as fab is quite new to me, but it just shows, you see, that we tend to look at what we look at and not the effect that we're having. And I think perhaps we got a touch of magic.
Mhm. Well, I mean, at what age was this the person in the
She
bank?
should be in sort of mid to late 30s.
Oh, well, there you go, young,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
so, but that's great. But of course, the problem is, and I think I've mentioned this on your program before, and that is the famous George Bernard Shaw quote that youth is wasted on the young.
Young, yes.
Because what we need is the hope and ambition of youth, and with the experience to back it up, to know how to make it work, and that rarely happens. But we do need more youth. Our time is
Yes,
over. We're more in the analysis field than we are in the action field. Um,
yes.
Nothing we're going to do today or tomorrow, in the short time that's left to us, will really change the scheme of things. So we need some strong young people coming up. Um, I suppose with wise heads behind them, uh, and then we'll see the changes. Now, what does that mean? Somebody in their 20s or 30s? No, I think it's not the age. It's not your physical age. It's the age at which you think. In which you think. If you think like a young person, if you have hope and ambition, um, and and um, and above all, I think the future of Britain. If you're a politician, if you have pride in your country, if you want your country to succeed, instead of your own political career to become paramount. And I think too much of that we see, where we do get politicians who resign or get fired for their views. We've seen quite a bit of that in the Conservative Party recently. Yeah, there's hope there. I don't think we should ever deprive ourselves of hope. It's the critical element that will give
Yes.
us a viable future.
I think that I think it was Socrates or Plato. Mind
Mhm,
you, the two are indistinguishable,
mhm,
except by a couple of centuries. But is if a man finds himself an expert in one thing, he immediately thinks that he's an expert in everything else.
that's
And
true.
if we could actually just do a little bit of self-assessment,
Yes.
I mean, I will not touch anything to do with nuts and bolts because it'll fall apart. I am totally and utterly hopeless with my hands
Me
and
too.
fingers, and you'll probably remember
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But so many people uh, will actually say to you, "Oh, I can do that," or "Leave it to me." And actually, when you do leave it to them, it's an absolute disaster because it's a belief that because they're a successful doctor or a successful lawyer
Mhm.
or for that matter, a successful electrician, is that
Mhm.
they can then do other things, which they can't, and they're not experts and they shouldn't offer.
Well,
If we can have a sort of a self-realization like that, we might get further.
I think that what happens with people who perform specific tasks do develop analytical minds, and you can apply that skill, analytical skill, to different fields, not necessarily knowing what the solutions are. And life being cyclical, as we get older, I think we can say that we've witnessed things over our lifetime that have worked and those that haven't worked. And when we see people trying to do something that didn't work in the first place, don't keep trying. Don't keep
Yes.
digging. Don't
Yeah,
keep digging.
dig yourself a hole. Yeah.
Digging yourself deeper into a hole, and which again means we're still talking about British politics. Both sides keep on digging. There was a time when the Labour Party was absolutely needed, when the working class was exploited by the wealthy, and it was totally wrong. And that once the industrial revolution produced great wealth, and it needed to be shared more equally. And so the birth of the unions is a very healthy thing. But we've gone beyond that now. I think the Labour Party has to define what its role is. And the Conservative Party has totally lost notion of what its role is.
Yeah,
I don't think either party has got the country at heart. The managerial skills to put it back on track seem to be absent in both cases, I would say. And priorities, the ability to prioritize, to analyze. I don't see anybody in either party that can do that. Kemi Badenoch is sitting there waiting because she maybe has the latent ability to form something, but she'll probably become the head of the Conservatives in opposition, and that's an unholy job to have, because you eventually are not the person who leads them into final victory. But the problem, I believe, with the Conservatives began when they ganged up and kicked out Boris Johnson.
I think so too. I had somebody on this morning who was sort of very negative about Boris, but is like all people. There are pluses and there are minuses, and when somebody gets the knife in, there is no plus.
Well, no, there you go. I mean, 80 seat majority, obviously hit with COVID and the rest of it, but still riding high in what was needed to be done, I think. And then suddenly the Palace Revolution, they chased him out of there. They had this rather sad experience with Liz Truss. Sad, I think, for Liz Truss, because she got the right ideas, just handled them, putting them into action badly, and then decided behind closed doors that it would be Rishi Sunak, because he was the least possible threat to anybody else.
Oh, yes.
So no wonder they've gone from the moment they kicked out Boris, they just shot themselves not in the foot, but in the knee and in the heart and everything.
Yes,
total suicide, useless. Anyway,
yes. But it's absolutely your assessment is that they weren't acting in the interests of the country. They were acting in the interests of themselves.
Absolutely. And both parties are the same. Both major parties are the same, I feel.
Yes, that's right.
And the one thing that you could say about now, this puts me in a very strange position here to defend Jeremy Corbyn, who I think is a frightful individual. But at least he believed in what he believed in.
Yes.
Nutcase and ideological extremists and what have you, but he believed in something, and he strange. You get you actually get people. Would you believe it? Who believe in all sorts of strange things. Well, he believed in what he believed in, so he maybe was an honest man. And but it wasn't what the country needs, and it wasn't what society needs. So I hope to hell he's been chased out forever. But maybe he was honest, an honest guy, just following his heart and following what he thought was right.
It could easily be. The only thing is that if you're that dogmatic, you have to question whether you can actually represent a wide spectrum of society.
Well, I think he represented his own ideology and would sought to impose that on society. It raises the question: to what extent did the early Russian revolutionaries believe in what they were doing?
Well, of course, the early Russian. Everybody thinks that the Russian Revolution was only one. The early it was the Trotskyites who actually undertook the revolution and then were immediately taken over by the next party. So they didn't last long, the revolutionaries.
Well, the early revolutionaries, led by Kerensky and others, they lasted about a year, if that. I'm not sure
Yes,
that it even lasted a year, and then the revolution was hijacked by the, as you say, the Trotskys and the Lenins and what but that's simply the turmoil of change when you were moving from a highly centralized monarchical system to a more theoretically plebiscited system such as communism. So that's not surprising that there was a lot of push and shove at the top at the time. But you're quite right. The Russian Revolution as such was hijacked by the extremists, the Communist Party. And a gap in my historical knowledge, but I'm not sure whether Kerensky was a communist in the sense that has become to mean communism. He was one for the power of the proletariat, but I'm not sure what the actual title that his party bore. But then again, that's a gap in my historical knowledge. Yeah. But no, we how about that? We need a revolution. And,
yes.
But you and I are too,
Harry, the thing is that,
you and I are too old to lead that revolution now. Do you realize we can't even lift?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
But is the one thing that I think history has taught us is that nothing is impossible. Is we say, oh, we would never have a revolution here. But I would be, if I was in power, I would be very, very guarded against that sort of thing happening, because I think that dissent has shown in our own House of Commons to be a very strong force, and as well, it got rid of Theresa May, and certainly in some ways got rid of Boris.
Well, I think a very good idea would be to get rid of Parliament. I mean, right and left. I mean, I don't think that they're out of tune with the country. And if we're talking about revolution, are we not witnessing some form of revolution with the anarchy in the streets of London?
Absolutely.
At the moment, where people, some of them look fairly sane, some of them look as if they come from somewhere else. They then certainly motivated by other people's interests other than the interest of Britain, and they're calling for an entire nation to be wiped off the map. So we've got anarchy prevailing in the streets of London, not since the Gordon riots against Catholicism. Have we seen anything like that? I mean,
no, that's right.
Gordon ended his days in Newgate Prison, where he entertained royally, by the way, but that's another story. And died there. Well, that's probably a good place to put all this rabble and get on with running the country. Yes, Lord Gordon. That's a character. I mean, but there you go. Well, if we could be young again, Keith, we could change the world.
But we would need the knowledge that we've gained in this last 50 years, Harry.
Okay.
Incidentally, it was changing topic for a short period of time, and 50 years. I received a email the other day telling me that it was Alumni Day for the Scribes, the rugby club which you and I founded many years ago. And I was able to say that on the 50th year that the book that they are publishing to celebrate this fact had brought you and I together, and that we now broadcast together, and that also with Desmond's passing, his nephew, the former ambassador to Kosovo, had told me that the first scribe was playing for the Kosovo national side.
Oh my goodness!
So I was able to make reference to all these things in a little note that I sent to them. How much it means to the history to some of those youngsters, I have no idea. But there are some who value it, and I thought, gosh, yes, we should honour people like John Lysett and Desmond and one or two more.
Well, is it this year that is the anniversary, or next year?
No, I think it's this year.
This year. That's so. We founded that in 1964. I thought it was 1965, but
well, you may be right. I don't think we actually played our first match until 1966, but we formed it. I mean, I can remember where you and myself and the chap called Dave Abbott, who was a real character, an Irishman, and I can remember us sitting with beers firmly in our midst, saying, "We've got to get fit," and that's what prompted it. Let's have a rugby club. And we were very lucky because we had people like the barman, Tony O'Duffy Brennan, and so on, all of whom got behind it and sort of said, yes, have a rugby club. We're not going to play, but we'll have a rugby club. And that's...
when is the alumni day?
On our very first match, our first manager, whose name was Tony Atkinson, syringed the oranges with gin.
Yes, that's right. Yes, I remember that. Yeah, but when is the alumni day for the scribes?
It was this last Saturday.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm. That sounds good.
I mean, they're obviously extremely well organized.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they've got young people's teams, they've got women's teams, they've got three main teams, I think, and their own clubhouse and the whole thing, and they seem to be far more organized than we were. But our organization was in the spirit of the true spirit of rugby, so it worked.
Well, they probably have a transgender team soon, I would think. But
yeah.
You never know, this modern world, strange world we're living in.
Mm-hmm. Harry, good as usual to see you, and I think that this view from outside of what's happening in Britain is very valuable. I've had several people mention it to me, and they find that it gives a different perspective on it than they can find even amongst some of the senior commentators in Britain, because we're so close to it, and you are able to see things from a different perspective, and it's very valuable. So we're grateful.
I'm delighted to give you my views. I mean, my views should be taken with a pinch of salt. I mean, as I've said, the nostalgic feelings of an old man, but somewhere there might be a grain of truth in what I hope there is in what I'm saying, because I wish Britain well. Apart from the temptation to come for a beer at the Black Horse, I may never tread its shores again. But however, it's a country that you hold dear in your heart, and that's a good point. Maybe a point to end on. And to what degree do today's youth have a sense of affinity for their homeland? Are young people patriotic anymore? Would they be prepared to sacrifice hard work, or even eventually in a war, their lives, the way we saw people do in our lifetime? Yeah, we lived through, or I lived right through the Second World War,
Yeah.
and was conscious of the sacrifice that was made, and even made more so afterwards as I learned more of the history. But I wonder if young people would have that sense of commitment today. And if you lose that, you lose it in relation to all your relationships, to the community, to marriage, to your children, to values. How many people espouse values anymore? Not necessarily.
Exactly.
So
There was a survey taken no more than 3 or 4 weeks ago about whether but when the chief of staff said that the Russians were likely to engage us in war within 10 years, is that the survey said that young people were not prepared to commit themselves to
yes, I saw that. Yeah.
the war.
Mhm.
But
Yes.
but I think also by the same token that they were not prepared to sacrifice their freedom either. It's always difficult to say whether people will actually jump to the defense of their country or not, depending upon what threat they're faced with.
Well, I think so. And if reality were to hit, I think we're living in a bubble. Many people are living in a bubble now, and whether it's in the political context or the social context, I think when reality hits them and hard, they would change their point of view. It's cyclical. They'll bounce back. A nation will eventually defend itself, its values, its need to survive, and particularly if the foundation is as strong as that Britain has. It is, after all, a nation that has lasted for many, many hundreds of years.
Yes, indeed.
And will not, I don't think, disappear overnight. So I think we can end on a positive note that I do believe. I think the main thing with kids, take their iPhones away from them, and then they'll make them work.
Harry, we'll see you this time next week.
With pleasure. With absolute pleasure.
Look forward to it.
Hope we haven't offended too many people, but
well, if we were placid, nobody would watch.
Absolutely. There you go. Okay. Well, God bless America.
Indeed. As Joe Biden might have said.
Oh God, they need blessing just as we do. Okay. Well, you take care, Keith.
And you too, Harry. Oh, just before you go, our friend from the Midwest of America, Carol Sanders, has been on. Every defendant should receive a copy of the court transcript from their most recent court date before being required to attend the next. He's fighting a battle against the American courts, and sends a chapter and verse to us. He said, "I'm grateful to Joe Biden for showing the insidious takeover of U.S. government by organized crime." Aha! Well, there's an issue that we haven't touched on. And until next week, Harry.
Okay, Keith. Take care. Goodbye, everybody. Bye.
Well, there we are. Another lively morning. Thanks, Carol, for your comments. We do take notice of them, and sometimes you make very telling comments, and they do come out over a period of a week or two, I assure you. So keep them up. Right, you are. We'll dip off into the sunset now. We'll be back tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock. Until then, Toodlepip. And I'm trying to find the castle thing that Harry likes so much. And just to end on, oh, here we are. Here we are. Here we are. Until tomorrow, Toodlepip.
From Lewis in the Black Horse Pub.